Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this edition, I'm going to take one of my contrarian viewpoints and tell you that I think that the 2013 film Man of Steel should probably be rotten. I'm sorry, it just should be. Now, we see that it has a 56% on the tomato meter and a 75% on the audience score. Now, certainly there's a lot of review going on here. We have 448,000 plus user ratings to make that 75% quite fresh popcorn audience score. But I'm sorry, I saw this in the theater in 2013. I saw it on its opening weekend. In fact, I think I saw it on its opening night. I was very disappointed. The Superman and Man of Steel comes off as very much indecisive, conflicted, assholish. It's not just dark. I mean, fanboys say, well, this is the dark version of Superman. Actually, it's the non-Superman version of Superman. Man of Steel, I mean, he looks good. Henry Cavill looks good playing Superman. He's the perfect person to play Superman. But just playing Superman as somebody that lets his dad die by tornado just for the sake of a handful of people possibly seeing him do something, it doesn't add up. That was the first part of the movie that didn't add up for me. When that was supposed to be a big decision that Superman made to let his dad, played by Kevin Costner, die. And it doesn't come across as genuine to me. It comes across as fake, as forced, as a choice of the screenwriting that doesn't work. Because Superman is super fast, right? I mean, he's certainly fast enough to whiz over there and pull Kevin Costner, his dad, away from the tornado, along with several of the cars if he wanted to, in such a high-speed way that nobody would see who did it or how it happened. So, come on, this just isn't workable for me. That's the big flaw that hit me right in the face from this. It's obvious, it was obvious to me at the time watching this in the theater that the director, the writer, he simply wanted to have Superman let his dad die because this was his dark vision, his Dark Knight type of feel to Superman. But it feels completely stupid and it doesn't match even with the abilities or character that we know of Superman. So I'm going to say I think this film should just be rotten, just for the attempt to make a dark version of Superman that doesn't fit Superman. And so I'm going to go through on this contrarian edition, and I'm going to look at this film, the audience reviews, and I'm going to, like I like to do, I'm going to ignore those 5 and 4-star reviews from all those fanboys that just like anybody in Superman's costume and they'll just give this a high rating just because Cavill looks like Superman. Well, I'm sorry, I'm just going to read the 3-star and below reviews, and I'm going to take a look at the reviews that would agree with me and find out what other flaws this film might have, because that's not the only flaw. That was the first thing that struck me bad about this film. When I walked out of this theater, and I was with my wife at the time, and she's not into comic book movies, but usually when we walk out of a film, she'll ask me, because I'm the one into these type of films, what I thought of it, and I said, it was okay, and that's the best I could do. That it was just okay. I didn't feel great. I didn't feel good. I didn't want to see more. I just responded right off the top of my head, it was okay. And that's what I think now. And to me, that's rotten for a Superman movie. It's not supposed to be just like you walk out and you say, it's okay. That's a fail. That's a fail, guys. I'm sorry. So I think I agree more with the rotten reviews on this, and we're going to find them. Now, other flaws I think this movie had, we've seen it before. We've seen Superman's origin story we've seen it before, right? Everybody's seen this before in both film and in TV show land. We've seen his origin story before. We've seen variations of it, but we all know this origin story. This is literally the story of Moses, right? I mean, that's where the original comic of Superman and Action Comics comes from. We all know this. This is a cliched opening, but yet this is the first superhero, right? We all know the story. Why did they choose to waste a lot of the film doing yet another origin story with Russell Crowe as the dad? This was better in 1978. We saw it in 1978. What more could you improve upon? Well, you could give it better CGI. Certainly, this was given better CGI. Zack Snyder all CGI'd it up. Great. But you know what he did by doing that? He actually created a movie with a big split down the first third of it. Because the movie starts off as an action, adventure, fantasy, sci fi set on an alien world. Visuals were great. And then all of a sudden, there's an abrupt break in the film, and we end up on Earth, and we're in a kind of disappointed, angry, assholish mood of a character now. Um, why? Why did it have to be like this? It's just so pathetic. And then at the end of the movie, Superman, he's still an asshole. In fact, he's destroying military property to make a point to a U.S. Army general. What did he do? You know, it's almost like the government would have made the right choice by just turning him over to Zod and his crew. And the choice to even have Zod show up as the villain, I guess that's just Zack Snyder's cheap way out of having a plot, because yeah, you're given Superman and he's like a god almost, and you have to come up with a way for him to be, under stress, to have something to struggle against a villain of equal stature. And what was the easiest, cheapest way for Snyder to do that? Yeah, just put General Zod coming to Earth. Come on now. We saw this better in Superman 2. We really did. We saw this in Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, and we saw a better British cast playing Zod and his henchmen. I'm sorry, there's nothing good about this. There's nothing believable about this. That's why I walked out of this just like wondering, why does this feel like it's just okay, and I'm disappointed. It was the first time I walked out of a Superman movie and I felt disappointed. Now, I didn't see Superman 4, The Quest for Peace in the theater. I knew it was bad. Luckily, I saw that actually on cable. I did see Superman 1, 2, and 3 with Christopher Reeve in the theater. And, I had more fun with Superman 3 with Richard Pryor. I felt better coming out of the theater watching that. This is just like disappointing, and all for the sake of just trying to do a dark Superman, because that's what Zack Snyder and certain fanboys out there wanted. They're just so obsessed with the Dark Knight and Batman that they needed Superman to come along in this theme. No, it was wrong. And so here we go. And I'm going to get a lot of these fanboy 5-star and 4-star reviews, and I'm just going to flat out ignore them. How about that? Now we're going to go down, and I'm going to just do 3-star. I might entertain 3.5 stars, but that's it. If it goes higher than that, no way. I'm not even going to read one word of it. So let's go down. Let's just make a note that I have the most recent review of coming from 5 days ago in what looks like Spanish. So this is still being reviewed by people. We're in 2019. This movie's from 2013, so 6 years out. This is still relevant. And I hear people arguing about it online, people saying they hate it, people saying that it's not Superman. And you know what? I've finally joined their side, and I'm going to agree. This is not Superman. This is not the Superman we need. And we don't need another origin story, please. Don't reboot it again just to make it different. No more origin stories. We've had enough. But let's move on and find some relevant reviews here, audience reviews. Okay, November 17th, 2019, 2 stars. This movie had a very gritty tone. That just didn't have a good effect on me. It tried to be an epic movie, but flopped. I'll agree with that. You know what Zack Snyder tried to do to make this epic is just have like, I don't know if it was 45 minutes or an hour, but the whole last part of this movie is just a long-ass fight where Zod and Superman just punch their way through buildings and kill a lot of people in the process, I would imagine, although that's not directly shown to the audience. You can imagine with skyscrapers dropping to the ground in the middle of the day that there's a lot of casualties. But no, Zod and Superman are just like smashing each other through buildings in what would be considered, fan service for a 12-year-old that likes to take his action figures and just slam them together in mom's living room. That's what it came across as. It's very boring. I actually thought about the time while I was watching this in the theater. It just went on for so long. And there was blatant product placement of every type throughout this long, pointless fight scene. Pulled you right out of it, not to mention just long. I mean, how can action become boring? Well, it becomes boring when it just goes on and on and on. It's not action anymore. It's just pointless. So let's continue here. And another word, Zach Snyder. I made a rotten review on Sucker Punch. You know what? Zach Snyder had genius level stuff going on with the visuals in Sucker Punch. And yet in Man of Steel, there's nothing genius level about the visuals. They're very lengthy and they're very boring because of their length. And there's nothing genius level about them. There's no creativity to them. There's nothing we hadn't seen before. It's just done up a whole lot more expensively and a whole lot longer. Um, what happened? That's what I wonder, because why did Zack Snyder's visual style look so incredibly genius in Sucker Punch and then look like such boring ass stuff here? I don't know why. I don't know why, but maybe other people are going to comment on that too. So I'm already going into the second page because of all the fanboys. Here's one, November 7th. 3 stars. The movie is too dark and boring. Superman is emotionless in this movie, but it kind of makes sense because he was bullied in his young age. If I were a hardcore Superman fan, I would probably hate this movie, but I am not, so this is okay movie in my opinion. Yeah, you know what? I'm not a hardcore Superman fan or Superman purist. I don't collect Superman comics. I just really appreciated the first film, the first and maybe second film with Christopher Reeve. I thought that was done perfectly. It still holds up today. This thing, it is dark and boring, yes. Superman is largely emotionless. In fact, when Superman is like, we're still in the origins of him and he's kind of rescuing people, but he's not in his Superman outfit, he is like largely just like a plank of wood. I guess that is like Zack Snyder's idea of being stoic and heroic and dark, but it's not. Superman's not Batman. He's not hidden underneath a mask. It's like as though you were trying to do Batman and play him all stoic, but he didn't have the mask. That doesn't work for Superman, and it didn't work in this movie. It just felt wrong, and it felt boring, almost like you have Henry Cavill, who's capable of acting, and yet he didn't do any acting other than getting into the suit. 5 stars, best Superman movie ever. I'm sorry, fanboy, but I don't believe you, and that's the only 5-star review I'm going to read. So let's continue. And I'm moving down, and we have half a star. This isn't the Superman I know. I had to leave because my mom called me for Purim. Okay, funny, kind of funny. Half a star. I thought this was about a man who invented steel. Happy Purim, everyone. May the rabbis bring you joy. Okay, okay. October 2019, 2.5 stars. We can watch this film only for forgetting Suicide Squad. Well, you know what? If I had a choice between watching Suicide Squad again, I think I've seen it twice. One time I didn't make it all the way through. If I had to watch Suicide Squad again, and then you gave me the option, well, how would you like to, what if you could watch Man of Steel again? I would watch Suicide Squad again because I would have more to think about. I don't want to see Superman's origin story yet again, only done in a boring way. They almost tricked me. I almost read a 4-star review, but I won't. 3 stars, October 23rd, 2019. Casualties down really matter, I guess. Or casualties don't really matter is what they're trying to say. Yeah. 3 stars, it's too high. I would say I would give this 2 stars because, hey, this is a Superman movie. We have expectations, so I give this 2 stars. Now, having put that star rating aside, casualties don't seem to matter to anybody in this film. Superman has killed, by virtue of his endless fight with Zod, he has killed, conservatively speaking, thousands of people during that fight, even though that's not directly shown to us. You can just judge by the destruction. So thousands of people have died just because Superman wanted to endlessly fight Zod in the middle of what appears to be New York, Metropolis, whatever you want to call it. Now, if somebody, no matter who they were supposed to be, had killed all these thousands of people for whatever purpose, there's going to be a hero. The American people are going to see them as a hero. The U.S. military are going to see them as a hero. I'm afraid not. That's not the way it works. Otherwise, Osama bin Laden would be considered a hero by all Americans. He's not. So there's that, and that's a big flaw with this film. 1 star. This is such a disappointing movie as a fan of superhero films. My favorite superhero is Superman, so watching this film through the end gave me a disappointing feeling. The positive I could say about this film is the music is excellent. The film is extremely dark, and Superman's arc falls apart midway in the film. The film tries so hard to shoehorn Batman film vibes, but that doesn't work with Superman due to both contrast each other in the comics. Yeah, they're trying to say Superman and Batman are supposed to contrast against each other, so it makes no sense to have Superman become like a Batman themed personality. And there is no arc. Superman starts out as kind of being an asshole at the beginning of this, and he ends up being an asshole at the end. So yeah, the character arc thing really isn't there. Now, if Superman had started out this dark asshole at the beginning, and then at the end he had become a likable guy and had been more human, that would have worked. But that's not what they did here. Why? I don't know, because we don't even get that in the Dark Knight. Nobody in the Dark Knight, nobody's going to tell you that Batman from, the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, as it were, nobody's going to say that just Batman didn't change at all and he started as an asshole and ended as an asshole. That's not what happened. Yet with Superman Man of Steel, that's what happened. So what was the point of this other than a director trying to tell us that his version of Superman is better as an asshole? I don't get it. 2.5 stars. During the 10th and final chapter of Quentin Tarantino's epic 2-volume spaghetti western Kill Bill, the title character, played by David Carradine, delivers an incisive monologue concerning the mythology of Superman. In less than 200 words, Quentin Tarantino provides a more perceptive analysis of Superman, Clark Kent, than writer David S. Goyer and director Zach Snyder manage in over 2 hours of cinema. To be fair, Man of Steel is not completely devoid of character or heart. Yeah, they've got a point there. This is like a really bad take on Superman. This is like, it seems like the movie's trying to tell you that Superman doesn't give a shit about collateral damage. The point is just to like use his fist to pound the shit out of the bad guy, and who cares who gets in the way. That's the only thing I could take out of this as a theme, because even at the final end of this movie, what does he do to the US military? He destroys one of their satellites because, it was tracking him. He couldn't have just politely asked them or tried to be a nice guy about it. He had the power to. Again, why do you need to solve everything with your fists when you already are a god? It's just like you're going to have people hate you. You're doing the opposite of what a public relations person would suggest that you do. It almost brings me back to a Hancock level of stupid logic, bad PR. Superman doesn't care about bad PR or casualties. That's not dark, that's just stupid. It's not Superman, that's for sure. 4.5 stars, I won't read that. Almost tricked me on that one. I don't even want to read 3.5-star reviews. It's a chore and it's insulting to what I think. 3 stars from October 1 of 2019. The action is amazing, yet the story is bland. Yeah, it is. I mean, it goes on a long time on the alien planet of Krypton. It goes on a long time with a lot of visuals. Clearly, a lot of money was spent, no question about that, but then it doesn't add up to a whole lot. It's really disjointed from the rest of the movie. It does pad the running time a lot, and I thought it was going into boring territory before it, went back to Earth. 3 stars, September 30. A fair start for DC Extended Universe, but slow in certain sequences. Good mention for General Zod. Well, General Zod was like workable in this, but what was done with him in the script was just dumb. Let's leave it at that. 3 stars, September 26. Cavill suits the part very well. It's a shame the movie was written like a cold cup of coffee. Yeah, it really was. You walked out of this, if you had a cup of coffee in your hand when you walked out of this theater, it was a cold cup and it was half finished, and that's the way it made you feel. 1 star, decent superhero movie, but a terrible Superman movie. Yeah, I'll agree with that. For an action, sci-fi, adventure, superhero type thing, it was decent. It had the budget, it had the actors, it had everything going on, but it was kind of like taking the big fight scene of Avengers Endgame without having all the other material in the MCU before it. It was very kind of like, what was the point? So let's move on. Looking for a 3-star. Here we go. 3-star, September 15th, but Spanish, but I'll have to leave that one. Don't want to insult myself and my knowledge of Spanish in this video. Here's one from August 20th, 2019, 2.5 stars. The tragedy here is this film has so much potential to be a classic within the superhero genre. If the film stuck with a linear origin storytelling format, it could have made the man from Krypton so much more identifiable for an audience who also struggles with identity issues. A pitiful start to a disastrous cinematic universe. Yeah, this is a review from recent times, 2019, and they're still judging the DC cinematic universe as being disastrous. And largely it is. They've had successful films, but it's still disjointed. It doesn't come together cohesively to tell a story. So it's like, yeah, I would judge it still as a disappointing disaster. 2.5 stars, maybe it could rise up to 2.5 stars. I disagree, though, with the linear origin storytelling format. They're saying that it wasn't linear enough. It was largely linear. It didn't have a lot of flashbacks and whatnot. If it did or didn't, that wouldn't have saved it. It would have still been boring because it had that gigantic fight scene at the end that just didn't add up to anything. It just wasted a lot of money. Let's continue on. We're multiple pages in. We have so many 4- and 5-star reviews, and I just won't tolerate those 4- and 5-star reviews. I just won't tolerate them. 3.5. I'm not even going to tolerate 3.5. Here's one. 2.5 stars from July 21st, 2019. It's a dark movie that doesn't work for me. Yeah. Very simple. I wish they would have given us more, but okay. 2.5 stars, July 14th. Henry Cavill is a little on the bland side with his acting. The universe they try to establish for the DCEU is a little unorganized and muddled. That's an understatement. The movie isn't bad, but it's nothing that will blow you away. It has some moments that are fun and entertaining. It feels wrong comparing the DCEU to the MCU, but this is a major step down. Yeah, and the moments that had romance, they're a total fail. It doesn't feel like Superman and Lois Lane have any chemistry at all. In the original Superman from 1978 and its sequels, it works very well. Superman and Lois Lane have a quirky on-off romance. They kind of like fit together well, but it's got comedy in there. In this, it's just like they stare at each other and they have like an unspoken love for each other, and it's very boring and bland, and it doesn't work for me. I don't buy it at all. It's almost like the director just forced them to have a love story and we're supposed to go along with it, but it doesn't feel real at all. The love story part is just completely, it's inauthentic and unbelievable. 2.5 stars. The movie could have done better had they laid out things straight. No wonder why the ratings on Tomato Meter is low. Actually, the ratings on Tomato Meter is the critics meter, you mean? Well, almost no superhero movies are going to get very high on the Tomato Meter because critics just don't take superhero movies, or rather critics take superhero movies a bit too seriously. It's always been that way. So there's very few that would ever get a high rating on the Tomato Meter. But that being said, it's the audience score that still has an unusually high rating for a film like this. That's why I'm here. I don't believe it should be 75%. I think it should be rotten. It should be 59% on the Tomato Meter audience score. Critics, I'm not going to argue that, because the critics, you'll never know what their criteria is. Sometimes it's just because they like or don't dislike a producer or a director, and sometimes they're just flat out paid off or bribed in different ways. But the audience score being 75%, that just doesn't sit right with me. I'm not going to let that go. 2.5 stars, not as good as the original movies. Yes, I agree 100%. The first two, even the first three Superman movies with Christopher Reeve are far superior to this film. Other than the fact that they just have they didn't have access to the CGI of today. Let's see here. 1.5 star from June 20th. Oh dear, that was a rotten one. So rotten. I agree, but I'm looking for more explanation there. 3 stars from June 18th. The MCU learned that action and humor blend well. The DCEU must if it is to survive. I wouldn't say that's this movie's downfall. Other DCEU films have humor. Look at Aquaman, very successful at the box office. I enjoyed it when I watched it. Very good special effects. Yet, overall, this movie, it's not that it's like the humor. It could have had no humor at all, but it was just too long and boring, and it just didn't feel like Superman. Superman didn't have to crack jokes, but at the same time, he was an asshole, and it's just too hard to accept Superman being an asshole and staying that way. Yes, in a temporary fashion, he could be exposed to some form of kryptonite, like in Superman 3, and turn into a bad Superman, sure. But, like, just for him to be an asshole and stay an asshole, and that's the Superman we know. No, it isn't the Superman we know. It's a complete fail for this movie, and it has nothing to do with humor. June 10th, 2019, 2 stars. The movie was too dark for a Superman movie. This was not very good at Superman, in my opinion. Story and great costumes, definitely worth its rating. If you mean its critic rating, then I agree. It's worth a bad critics rating. It's worth a bad audience rating too. I don't know why they like it so much. 2.5 stars. Am I the only one who thinks Superman should be a fun and bright film? Where's the comedy and the funny Clark Kent in this? It's too serious, in my opinion. It's not just too serious, though. It's just not Superman. Superman is just, he can be serious, but he's just an asshole in this for no reason. He lets his own dad die for trivial, reasons just because he must to make the plot go on. No, no, no. And if Superman's dad did need to die, why would you put a likable guy like Kevin Costner to play his dad? It also doesn't work. It kind of goes against, if you wanted it to be more or less off-putting that he let his dad die, maybe they should have changed it up. Snyder should have changed it up a bit and made Clark Kent's dad more of an unlikable guy. That would have been fresh, and then it wouldn't have been so bad seeing him die. I think that would have been a better take. Why not change it up and make Superman's parents more unlikable and have flaws? And then that way, the asshole Superman would work better, and you could make him like grow out of that and become more likable. And we'd have more of a reason to see why he's an asshole, not just that he was bullied in one scene on the playground. That doesn't work. I'm sorry. I was bullied at one time as a kid. It didn't turn me into a total asshole, and it's just not believable. So let's move on. 3 stars. The first time I saw this movie, I thought that it could have been better. For some reason, I saw it again and thought it was totally epic. Either way, Superman deserved a better effort than this, though it's not a bad movie. You're being too kind. Let's move on. Multiple pages in. I'm seeing a lot of 4 and 5 stars. Continuing on. Fanboys up the wazoo. Aha. 1 star, May 23rd, 2019. When hard to watch comes into mind, I think of this movie. Bad motivations and badly crafted storytelling contribute to this dud of a film. When I can hardly keep my eyes open when seeing a superhero movie, there is a problem. Yeah, it's like when you get into that last long action sequence, your head starts to nod off. Of course, I was in the theater and the soundtrack was so loud that, everything's cranked up and it's, in your face, so it's hard to sleep. But if I had seen this at home for the first time, like on Blu-ray or something, I might have nodded off in that last scene. It goes on and on. 1 star, May 12th, 2019. Man of Steel prose, fine editing, decent musical score, cons, mediocre acting, weak script, bad directing, atrocious pacing, dull visual style, generic plot, bland action, poor cinematography, overall grade D, 2 out of 10. I'll largely agree with that, but I think the cinematography was actually good. But if you just want to bag on it, throw that in too, I guess. The major flaw in this is that it's just not Superman, so you can easily pick apart the rest of it because it's just so offensive that you're not watching Superman, and you are baited into paying for this with the title Man of Steel, which is supposed to be Superman. It's not supposed to be Batman without his mask. 1 star. In an attempt to blend the gritty realism of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy with the lighthearted camp of Superman, Zack Snyder has created a disaster movie in more ways than one. Featuring Henry Cavill as Superman, certainly looks the part, but sorely lacks Superman's humor and general benevolence, and with emotional instability and pursed lips reminiscent of Michael Keaton's Batman. The film also comes with a darkness filter, which further depresses the viewer. Yeah, exactly. It's like they tried to make Superman into Batman and yet also didn't explain how that was, at least Batman in his origin story, it explains why he's like that. This Superman's just like that because a couple of playground bullies beat him up and he couldn't show them who the boss is, and thereby he became an asshole the rest of his life. Yeah, not exactly believable. 2 stars. There's potential to be a sort of powerful allegory for Jesus with a resonant superhero, but Zack Snyder's dark style, the overlong runtime, and the lack of a personal connect prevents this movie from achieving its potential. Yeah, 2 stars, peaking out at 2 stars. 2.5 stars. A good origin movie that was ruined by an overlong and repetitive third act. You got that right. Wow, just went on and on and on. It had no consequence for anybody at the end, apparently. It's okay to kill thousands of people. People forget all about it. Don't worry, Superman. Just keep blowing up those buildings. 3 stars. Man of Steel was okay. It's not as great as other DC films, but it was good. The movie was action-packed, making it even more exciting, but it lacked something. Too serious all the way through and kind of felt bland. It felt very dragged on at the beginning and took a while for it to pick up. It is a nice film to watch in the moment or if you want to watch the DCEU films, but it isn't a movie you will be able to remember in a few weeks' time. Yeah, and it really dragged. The part where he's like going through discovering the ship from Krypton in the ice. Very long and boring and pointless, and it's pointless the way Lois Lane like wanders in there and discovers it too, and it's just boring, and that was a very boring part. They could have cut that whole thing out of the movie. There was no point to it at all. It was part of the origin story. We just didn't need it all. And it didn't have anything to do with the love story either. I mean, big deal. Superman and her walk around in the ship and like all of a sudden they're in love. Like, really? I was just bored. It was a mistake. That was a complete mistake. It was also a complete mistake to have that Kryptonian ship just conveniently out there for Superman to find. It was a dumb way to change up what they did in Superman 1978, where it was like spawned out of a crystal from his ship. And this one, the ship is just out there to be found because apparently Kryptonians had visited Earth before, and they just hand wave away that and what they were doing there from before. Very boring. And there's a flaw too. I should go back to that final scene where Superman and Zod are just punching each other endlessly through skyscrapers. Another bad part of that is that you can tell that it's a lot of CGI, and then there's a point at which the newspaper editor, played by Lawrence Fishburne, is like buried in rubble. And he's obviously in what amounts to a very small rubble pile, a very real set of rubble that he's inside of, with dust powdered around, and then all around him is just CGI. And it's very reminiscent of the cheap job that was done by George Lucas in The Phantom Menace with his CGI work. And it's disappointing to see that in a Zack Snyder movie, but that's just an aside on some of the flaws with the CGI. It was obviously fake. Yeah, so let's move on to yet another page, and we will continue for a while until I destroy myself with how bad this movie is. 2.5 stars, March 31st, 2019. Great casting, terrible overall story. Soups doesn't kill people, he just doesn't. Oh, in this movie he does. He doesn't even care. He kills a whole lot of people, in the thousands, no question about it. But remember, guys, he's the good guy. He kills more people than Zod and his henchmen do. Figure that one out. 3 stars, March 30th. Decent movie if you can remove the fact the character is supposed to be Superman from your brain. Yeah, it's like Superman for people that don't know anything about Superman. March 27th, half a star. Superman deserves better than this garbage with plot holes you could run a tank through and nothing but mindless action that takes half the movie to get to and is so repetitive that it's annoying. And I think that's a good one to leave this one on. You know, it was supposed to be so epic. It was supposed to be, you know, this big budget Superman film, Man of Steel. My God, it was supposed to be so great. I walked in thinking that, and then I walked out and I said to my wife, it was okay. Yeah, this is really bad. And but please don't put another origin story out there. Don't reboot this yet again with yet another origin story. Move on to a different. My advice for the DCEU: move on to a different character. Somehow kill off Superman. Get rid of the problem that he's too powerful for your cinematic universe. Kill him off. Be done with it. And, you know, that's what they did until they brought in Justice League. They shouldn't have brought Superman back. They just shouldn't have. I guess you could kill him off again, only do it in a more exciting way this time and make sure it sticks. And that's my advice to anybody out there wanting to continue on in the cinematic world of Superman. Just kill him off and move on. And I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.